everybody. You're listening to the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Billy Z.
I'm Steve Morey.
And who's that on the mic there with us?
Hey, guys. This is Caleb.
Yes, it's Caleb Alexander-McKinzie from the Southern Fried Geekery Podcast and our good friend. And we are here, again, Comic Book Bears. We are hairy, heavy homos that talk about comics, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in. And Caleb's here to join us to talk about Avengers Endgame. Now,
I'm like the hairless variant.
Yeah, well, you know, I still cannot get around the appropriation of bear culture that was offered by your co-host. That's just always going to factor into a description of you. We are going to be a bit lo-fi on this episode.
Okay.
If you listen to our episodes, sometimes they are somewhat heavily edited, I would say, because there are certain members of the cast, and I'm pointing at myself, that are kings of and I don't like putting product out with that much. So you may hear, some technical glitches, you may hear some repeating and some stammering, but please deal with it because we are coming to you as close as we can to a live show. We were recording this on April 28th, 2019, and that's the date that I actually saw Avengers Endgame. These gentlemen saw it yesterday, and so it's very, very fresh, and with very, very fresh comes very, very raw. That makes no sense, but I just made it make sense, and that's what you're going to be hearing in your ear pods, a very lo-fi, raw podcast. So if there's glitches and if there's ums and ahs and all that stammering stuff that I talked about that you don't hear from our show very regularly, sorry, we got to get this one out to you because it's a hot potato. So
it's a hit potato.
Well, that's an in joke.
I'm still trying to get over the number of times you just used the phrase raw and ah in the same sentence without making a joke. Sorry. I'm gonna class this joint up.
Oh, good too. Well, you are doing a fantastic job on your podcast, as I told you the other day. I said that you were the driving force, and it's a very nice propulsion every episode that I listen to. So I'm buttering you.
Well. And I appreciate that. Thank you. And coming from you, it means a lot because, I've said this on this podcast before. I was listening to your podcast a long time before I ever decided to launch my own. And, in many ways, you taught me how to do a podcast. So that's the highest compliment coming from you.
Ooh. Okay. Mutual Admiration Society. Another type of society is the Avengers. So I don't know how much explanation we have to give people who are listening to this podcast that there is a film called Avengers Endgame that is directed by the Russo brothers and is the 22nd film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe series of films. I probably don't need to say that, but we do think we are honor bound to provide some sort of plot synopsis for the film that we are going to be talking about. So, Steve, I'm going to throw it over to you. So tell us and everyone listening what the film is all about.
So you kind of put it pretty clearly that it's very difficult to summarize this movie without some minor spoilers right off the bat.
Major spoilers.
Or major spoilers. I'm going to see if I can avoid some major spoilers for the first couple of minutes, but be forewarned that there's at least some points where there is no way to not spoil a major factor in the movie or a major plot point or a major character action. So
I am visualizing you pounding the table while you said that.
I am. I'm pounding the table. But succinctly here we have again the Avengers Endgame, which is the 22nd film in the series. I think technically only the 20th film that is completely part of the MCU. I've seen people not count the Incredible Hulk because that's Universal, and Spider-Man Homecoming because that was a co-production with Sony. But technically, this is the 22nd film in the MCU.
Well, then why don't you take out the Paramount distributed films? That makes no sense.
Exactly, because Iron Man 1 and I think Iron Man 2 were both Paramount.
Thor and Captain America and the Avengers, yeah.
If you go by the phases provided by Marvel, that you absolutely count Incredible Hulk. It's in the box set, it's in everything. So I think you kind of have to.
Yep.
Yeah. And I know there's some trickiness now, of course, because Disney owns it, and they still don't have the 100% rights to both Spider-Man and the Incredible Hulk. But it is what it is. It is the 22nd film. And this one is actually the fourth film in the series that's directed by the Russo brothers, Joe and Anthony Russo. The first film that they originally had directed was Captain America Winter Soldier, the second Captain America film. They also followed it up with Civil War, and then Avengers Infinity War, the Part 1 that Endgame is Part 2 of. So they've had, and personally, I think they're probably some of my favorite directors in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They've made some of my favorite films from the MCU, so this was a fitting end to this first 4 phases of movies, and I think their cycle that they started with Captain America Winter Soldier in sort of shaking up the entire status quo. So anyway, the film picks up immediately after Infinity War. In fact, we see an extremely heartbreaking moment that features one of the Avengers that was not in the Infinity War film, and what happened to him immediately after the snap. And of course, the snap, Thanos' snap using the Infinity Gauntlet to eliminate half of the universe's living population. So that was people, bugs, birds. Apparently plants weren't part of it, but whatever. Other than, of course, our sad loss for Groot from Infinity War. But immediately following the snap, people are still reeling. The Avengers are still struggling to address what happened and find a way to get to Thanos. And after licking their wounds and bringing back Iron Man and Nebula from deep space, they work out a quick plan. They find where Thanos is, and they need to go back and find him and get those Infinity Stones from him so they can undo the snap. Again, this happens very quickly in the beginning of the film. They do discover Thanos, but unfortunately, the Infinity Stones are no more. And that is pretty much the way that they start this film off, in extremely depressing eventuality. And then 5 years later. So the bulk of this movie takes place after, 5 years after the snap. The world's trying to cope. The survivors, the people who are left behind, are trying to make their way through this new reality. And the Avengers are still there. They're still doing what they can do to keep people safe, to attack natural disasters. Captain Marvel, who has now joined the team and gotten a haircut, is off in space helping planets, like she says, who don't have Avengers to help them. But people are still broken. People are still hurting and finding it difficult to move on. And it's into this reality that Scott Lang, a.k.a. the Ant-Man, finds his way back from the quantum zone. For him, 5 seconds have passed, or 5 minutes have passed.
5 hours.
For the rest of the world, 5 hours. That's what
5
it was.
hours.
Yeah, 5 years for everyone else. And so, taking that knowledge and what he knows about the quantum realm, what little he knows about the quantum realm, he comes to the Avengers with a proposal and with a possible plan to figure out a way to get the Infinity Stones back before they were destroyed. So thankfully, with the help of the main group of Avengers, which is Black Widow, Captain America, Rhodey, or War Machine, help me out here. We've got Rocket Raccoon, who's joined the team. The Hulk, who has gone through a transformation and has now merged both sides of the Hulk. So he's Bruce Banner, but also the Hulk. So smart Green Hulk. And then some more reluctant members. One of them, of course, being Thor. And the other one being Tony Stark himself, Iron Man, who in the past 5 years has found his perfect life. He's got a family now. He's away from everything, and he's adjusting pretty well, considering. But he does come back because he knows that this could possibly work. And through the next 2 hours, lots of time travel, lots of really cool, amazing close calls and interesting scrapes from situations in previous movies. Before, of course, the final massive confrontation that we all know is coming, where the Avengers have the opportunity to to reverse the snap, but also must face a very much alive and very much determined Thanos, who now has decided that, well, apparently half the snap doesn't work, or half the universe doesn't work. We're just going to get rid of the whole thing. So stakes have never been higher. Everything's on the line. But it also leads to probably one of the most massive, confrontations and battle scenes ever in any comic book film up to this point. So hopefully I didn't spoil too much at that point. What do you think?
Well, I think there's one important point. Yeah, I think there's one important point you have to make, in that the rationale behind their time travel is to retrieve the Infinity Stones at points before Thanos has access to them.
Mm-hmm.
So they can bring them back. So they couldn't necessarily stop the snap from happening. In order for time to not be completely broken and destroyed. And there's actually a great cameo from a previous character from another Marvel film who explains that just taking the stones is not enough. They have to be able to let history happen as it did originally, but they can undo the snap at their point in history. So it's very interesting. Of course, that leads to something towards the end that I think is a wonderful ending for one of the characters. But I think that works for a summary.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for providing that. So we are nothing if not gracious to our guests. So Caleb, I'm going to throw this over to you. What did you think of the film?
I'm trying to think if there was a 30-minute stretch in this movie that I didn't get like the misty, teary eyes welling up just watching this. I absolutely adored it. I don't think it's the best. I don't think it's the best movie in Marvel's catalog. I do think it was a celebration of the past 10 years. I think it, especially in the first part of the film, everything that they did paid homage to the different films and to very specific scenes in those different films. It was a lot of fun. And for a kid who grew up reading these characters, I remember buying my first comic off a spinner rack in a Walden's book in a mall, and being teased at school. Everybody has the same story, give or take, but not having these characters, not having it known that I liked them, having to try to hide it, and then seeing it become such a pop culture phenomenon, literally a global cultural event. It's a little overwhelming, and especially now that you've grown with these characters, and it's not you're not getting one movie every 3 years. You're getting 3 movies a year for 10 years. You feel like you know these characters really well, and you've got a relationship built up with them. And so with that in mind, the movie does a really great job of emoting, and reaching out and connecting with you as a viewer, and drawing forth some emotions really easily. I think they did a very good job with that.
Okay. Any particular moments in the film that you thought were kind of ranked a little bit higher than others in terms of emotional resonance? Or
are we going heavy spoilers now, or can we?
I think we have
go
to,
into
because I just can't conceive of me saying the things I want to say about the film without spoiling the shit out of it. So
right.
Yeah.
I think we should open that door.
I second that. Yeah, definitely.
Well, motion carries. There were, and a lot of them came in the second half. So I will say that I think the first half of the movie, it was a little slow. So we're talking about a 3-hour movie here. I think the first half or the first third of the movie was a little bit slow as they kind of built up to what they were going to. I don't know that I've ever particularly cared about Tony in a way that this movie made me, but there is the one scene that specifically stands out is Tony was part of a team that got to travel back in time as they're going and they're trying to find these stones in specific points in New York so that they can kind of maximize their efforts. And Tony runs into his dad, and it's on the it's the day of, I don't know that it's Tony's birthday, but it's the due date, or it's getting very close for Tony's mom to give birth to him. And of course,
And let me tell you, that's
not.
bullshit, because Robert Downey Jr. is older than I am. Let that be stated for the record. He was not born in 1970.
No.
I got mad.
Yeah. He. But so in this scene, he's meeting his dad, and he's getting to see him, and it's, his dad is talking about being a father, and he's talking about being nervous about it, and he's not sure he's going to do a good job, and of course he's talking to his son, but he has no idea. And there's these little quirks, like he looks familiar, but he can't quite put his finger on who he is. And Howard just kind of, meets a stranger in an elevator and takes that moment in time to unload on him. And that was extremely poignant. I think that was great. Where the movie, where the hairs on my arms raised up, and I got extremely just goosebumped out and emotional, actually came. It's kind of the culminating event towards the middle of the film, right before that big battle Steve was talking about. All hope seems lost. Thanos looks like he's going to win again, and Steve is standing alone in front of an armada, and just staring down the barrel of a gun, and all of a sudden he hears this voice, and it's saying, "Steve, can you hear me? Steve, can you hear me?" It's Sam on your left, and portals start pouring open, and you just get, like, all the heroes, every single one of them. Anybody, like Marvel throws in the kitchen sink. But Sam comes out, Falcon, who of course there's that great relationship with. And that to me, I forgot I was in a crowded theater. I just wanted to stand up and shout. I thought it was a great scene, and it was a great way to do that. I lost all composure. I was a hot, shitty mess by the end of this thing.
Ugly crying.
Oh, just bad.
Look who just joined us. We have Bryan Pittard with us now.
Hello.
Oh, so good to have you, man. I'm so glad we just had this random conversation and you're on. So cool. So, Bryan, I've filled you in on what's happened so far in the episode, and I'm going to ask you, what did you think of Avengers Endgame?
Oh, boy. So, obviously I loved it. I don't think I've seen too many people who at least didn't like it overall, and I was certainly no exception. There were many, many, many moments in that film where I was heaving, flames. No, not a Clue type of being upset, but more of a just a ugly cry, I think, is the best way to. Yeah, I think like Caleb, like I couldn't contain the emotion of seeing moments like A-Force, make their. I mean, let's call it A-Force for lack of a better term, the all-female Avenger lineup, form up in that one scene, and the passing of the shield to Sam, and pretty much any moment that I think will piss off a certain subsection of our community, we'll call it. I reveled, and I thought this is, it's pandering. It's sort of fan service to a point, but a good kind that is highlighting representation intentionally in a way that is organic to the story, but is also, hell yeah, give it for the girls. Let them kick ass and chew bubblegum. So, I mean, any of those moments, of course, all of the deaths and all of the, there's Steve with a hammer, all the nods. There's so many nods in this movie, just whether it be like one little word, they'll say like impossible or incredible. I don't know. Like, there was just so many. I need to go back again with a notebook and catch all the little Easter eggy moments and dialogue bits and everything, and just because there's so much. I'm sure someone's already done this, so I can just go read the internet. But it's exactly what you want it to be. It's a culmination of what is it, 11 years? Is that right? 11 years, 22 movies.
2008 was Iron Man. Yep.
Like, it's so much to do. And with only maybe a couple little things that I felt like would maybe have improved the whole thing. Of course, armchair quarterbacking or directing, whatever. It was about as good. It was about as good as you could make it. And not everything happened that I wanted to in terms of plot either. Obviously, there were things I was disappointed we didn't get a little more resolution on in terms of like people ending up where they ended up, or are they alive or not. But I mean, those kind of things are story choices that it sounds like will in some cases, see some resolution to after the fact or after this movie. So, yeah, it's just so good. There's so many moments. I mean, I think those two are big highlights, or those couple there. But I think if I can leave, the thing that impressed upon me, or if only it were impressed upon me as much as I would have liked, Dad Bod Thor, because I never realized I had a thing for blondes. Or gingers? What is Thor, a ginger or blonde?
He's blonde.
He's blonde.
Blonde.
Yeah,
His eyebrows have gotten less blonde since the first movie, thank God, because those things were like dyed bright yellow. But no, he's super blonde.
I've never realized that about myself is really the problem here. That any little moment with drunk Thor doing what I do every Sunday, which is looking for a Bloody Mary as early as possible. I mean, like, all of that was just so golden, such great comedy. What's his name? Chris Hemsworth?
Hemsworth.
I don't want an L in there. Well, Helm, right? He has one, but no, Hemsworth. Like, his comedy timing is beautiful. Like, he is so organically one of the funniest, aspects of that story. Which the only time in comics I remember a funny Thor was that oh God, it was Samney who drew it, and I forgot who wrote it. It may have been Wade, but I don't think so.
Oh, is it the the Landridge, the guy who did the Muppets?
Yes. Thank you. Oh, thank you. So yeah, not since post-coital Thor, and some of the beats in that great, like, widely overlooked, or probably widely forgotten in a lot of cases since. Have I seen a Thor that's just so freaking funny? And man, I loved it. This is what I want. I like Thor Ragnarok because of this. I'm excited about Guardians Volume 3, or maybe no colon. I don't know. We were debating this earlier as whether they're going to bring back the colon in movie titles, but whatever. As Guardians of the Galaxy, like, that whole thing excites me to no end, to have that sort of cosmic with a little tinge of humor and Thor now, like, all of that combining, and I'm so excited for that storyline, so to speak, because I think none of us were sure what was going to happen with him and Asgard and all that crap, but now at least it looks like we can go off and have zany, ridiculous adventures with the Guardians, and I'm stoked. So, yes, and he needs to keep it. They need to keep Dad Bod Thor around, I think. They can round him out a bit. Like, his belly did look a little weird. Like, maybe just thicken him, like, 2 C's, and like, just give him a little more heft. Kind of walking towards the Volstagg kind of feel, but not too much. Anyway, there's a fine line there. That's all I'm saying. But no, I mean, and then of course Hairy Chest. Hairy Chest? What are we calling him? Dr. Bruce, Dr. Green, Professor Green, whatever that is.
I mean, yeah.
So,
I mean, that is it's like the perfect proportion. Big muscle Bruce with the fur and the. No.
Exactly.
I'm calling dibs on that one. That's mine.
All right, you get that one. I'll take Thor. You get that one. I think we're good.
Bulk.
Teamwork.
So yeah, I loved it. Obviously, it was great. So.
All right, well, there you go, Bryan, proving this is a Gay Bear podcast. I'm going to throw it over to Steve. Steve, what did you think of the film?
Oh, I hated it.
I bet you did.
No. I love this movie, and I think I did spend quite a bit of time, doing the tear up sniffle and the my eyes are watering, must be allergies, just multiple times throughout the film. Obviously, the opening scene with Hawkeye and his family punched me in the face. Just hardcore, like, ouch, this hurts. The scene where Scott Lang comes back and sees Cassie, who's now basically a grown young woman, that made me cry. Just a bunch of moments here and there. And that's, I think, kind of my feeling towards this film, is that it is a film. It's a movie of moments. And Bryan, you kind of touched on this. Like, there are scenes, there are moments, there are, like, images that pop up. Captain America wielding Thor's hammer. Just these really these interesting tableaus that pop out. that are straight out of the comics or straight out of fan fiction or whatnot. Altogether, as a film, there are some moments that are slower. That first third of the film, that kind of like lead up as they're trying to figure out how they're going to get everybody together to then go back in time and figure out how that's going to work. There were some funny moments. There were some cute dialogue bits. But once they're actually there and you're seeing those scenes from other movies, from previous films, in a different light, from a different perspective. I think we're having a quick laugh over America's ass, and that's a moment that kind of came out of them going back in time to the first Avengers film, and Steve getting to see himself from behind, saying, that is America's ass. And that was just really fun. Hulk having a moment with the Ancient One from the Doctor Strange films. Tilda Swinton came back, to kind of have a debate with him about what their entire plan was and what effect it could do. Like, that was a great scene, that moment between them. And then even, getting to see, and it was short and it was, kind of silly, but getting to see War Machine and Nebula watching Chris Pratt's Star-Lord dancing without the soundtrack benefit that we had while we were watching it as moviegoers. And yeah, you seem like an idiot. It's goofy, it's funny, it's stuff that we do when nobody's around to watch. But that was a great little scene. The moments that I think really impacted me the most were the moments at the end. Of course, there's the big climactic battle, where things, that moment where they think that they've won, and then Thanos and his ship shows up, and it's insane. The army that he drops down out of the sky is twice as large as the one that hit Wakanda in Infinity War. But then also in that same breath, when all the doorways open, like Caleb was mentioning, and seeing everybody from all the previous films and, just coming out, all the people that were lost because of the snap, making their appearance again. That was amazing. And then, of course, the quiet death scene in comparison of Tony Stark. And then the denouement scenes. And there were a bunch of those. And this is, for me, I was surprised but not disappointed that there wasn't an end of credits scene. We always sit through the credits for films just because we sometimes see people that we know who have worked on it. But this was interesting in that there wasn't anything that came at the end. There wasn't any mid-credits, special little scene or teaser for the next phase of films, or a hint of what's going to be in the next movies, because they really took care of that in the wrap-up scenes. Seeing Tony's funeral, seeing Thor get together with the Guardians to go off into space, seeing his moment with Valkyrie where he gives New Asgard to her, basically makes her the queen of New Asgard. Just those little bits and those little moments, seeing those people work together and seeing sort of where they're going next. And of course, the scene where Captain America goes and takes the stones back and doesn't travel back through time. He comes to the future the slow way round.
Yeah, the long way around. I was just thinking the Doctor Who thing. Yeah.
Exactly. And there he is as an old man passing the shield to Sam while Bucky looks on. And in that moment, it kind of implied that he and Steve had already had this discussion, that they knew what Steve's choice was going to be, that he was going to go back. And you see in those final moments, in presumably the early 50s, him slow dancing with Peggy Carter, because they did have a life together. And I think that, being able to see those moments, these scenes, made this film, it elevated this film, I think, a lot more than it could have been just being, like a follow-up action film, where it's like, oh, let's do some crazy stuff, and we're going to have these great special effects. And there's a lot of humor, there's a lot of, impactful emotional moments, but it was the moments themselves, you could take anything out of context and it would still be just like a great, this scene was great, this image was great, this action was really cool. And that's kind of how I feel about it. So it's hard to process. It's one of those films where even after leaving it, you loved it, but it's hard to pinpoint exactly why until you process it after. So,
well, I can immediately think of one element of the film that I absolutely loved, and that was the happy ending they gave to Steve Rogers.
Yeah.
And here, emotional. I mean, I think I don't think there's a person on this planet that wouldn't want to replay something in the method that they wished was available to them, and that they did it in such a abbreviated but at the same time such a powerful notion. I absolutely love that, and what a wonderful moment to almost end the film on. It's really close to the end. I loved, and sometimes it's the comic booky things is this meta stuff that comes in. I loved the first confrontation with Thanos on by the Avengers Mansion was the 3 Prime Avengers. I just love that circle, of here we're back with Thor, Captain America, and Iron Man. Steve with the hammer. That was the scene that the audience just went crazy in my screening. And also with, just the notion of audiences going crazy. I would like to poll around what you guys felt. With my audience, it was the reintroduction of the characters when they joined the battlefield. I mean, when Spider-Man came out, oh my God, I thought the row in front of me was going to explode.
Ours was T'Challa when he came out of the portal. Everybody lost their shit. And I was just so happy because, again, it's like that representation. And I'm aware of how important he is as a superhero now more than ever, but it's always nice to have that visceral reminder when the audience is just there gasping and cheering and so happy to see a character come back.
Yeah. And with you, Bryan, on seeing A-Force in some form, it was organic. It wasn't pulled out of nowhere. It just worked so well. And
you didn't have to do that. And that's why I was saying pandering.
There wasn't a lot of build-up. It by showing these assholes of how organically and how naturally this is part of the storytelling process, or can be part of the storytelling process, that says volumes. Totally. More than any blog post could ever do.
It shows commitment to diversity going forward. It's in some ways, I think it's a reaction to the fact that Marvel was slow to give a female-centric superhero. I mean, up until very recently. So in some ways, they're making up for lost time, but in such a great way. And I think it's a promise going forward that these characters will have legs.
Yeah.
Well, and on a lot of ways, this movie did a few things that were a giant middle finger to this section of the quote unquote fandom that we keep talking about. Like when Cap says "Hail Hydra," like I'm sitting there watching that and I just smile from one end of my face to the other because it's just like, no, they know exactly what they're doing, and they are, poking the bear in some sense. Not that it's actual bear, but it's just like, no, like we know what you get pissed off about. We remember all the stuff that you guys were saying on the internet and being assholes to everyone. So there were several moments like that where they were just like, no, fuck you. And yes, Carol Danvers is going to come out of nowhere and fly through a ship because that's what she does. And she's just going to be a rock star. And there's nothing you can do about it. So there were several moments that like Bryan was talking about, that they just came out swinging and they were like, yeah, we're not stupid. And we're going to make a little bit of a statement here. And I think that's great that they did that.
And she's going to do it with her bitchin' new haircut.
Right on.
Yeah. I loved how almost every prior film was referenced. I just loved that. And there were moments of like characters I didn't care about. Frigga, I didn't care one bit about Frigga. And I know this was born out of Chris Hemsworth and Rene Russo being very close friends in real life. And he always felt bad that almost all of her scenes from the first film ended up on the cutting room floor. So that was, again, a meta thing of, bringing a real world influence in there. But, her conversation of him telling, you feel like a failure. Great. You feel like the rest of us. Those were words that most people never need to hear, but certainly somebody like Thor does. And, even in that moment, injecting humor when she tells him to eat a salad. It was just across the board. It was everything that the Marvel Cinematic Universe films were known for in one delicious gumbo. I'm with you guys. There were things that I wish were clearer. I wish the end of the film with where characters were in time was clearer. I bring up Spider-Man. I can't conceive that Far From Home is going to be taking place in 2024.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah, sure.
I really had an interesting. So I did a discussion earlier with Flame On about this. Of course, we did a review right after we saw the movie together, and this came up, and it's like, how do you reconcile the high school scene? Are you saying in that Peter seeing not Genki, what's his name, Ned, yeah. Ned, how did they both get snapped? So they're both still in high school. Did MJ get snapped? So did the whole high school basically just get snapped, which is why they kind of picked up right where they left off? Like, I feel like this will be somewhat addressed. I mean, you can't not at least consider it in the next Spider-Man movie, but you don't want to make it a big thing because that would be exhausting, which actually might be why they're doing the field trip, get them out of Dodge, do something else. But like, there's there's problems with the way that they actually brought everybody back. Like, you'd think, why would you bring them all back in a trashed world just so that the people who are still there don't have to have their memories wiped? Like, they're in any time travel. So there's that too, the time travel, and then this whole wish undone, redo, reset button type of storytelling. It gets complicated and confusing, and then there's just all these things that fall out where you're like, wait a minute, if you really think about it, this doesn't make sense. And the only thing I can say is Russo's knew that because they made fun of Back to the Future intentionally as a way to go, yeah, by the way, we know that this is shit. We know that if you really think about this, it's not going to make sense. So we're going to put these little lines in here just as jokes, but we're hip to it. We know this is kind of all fall apart. Anyway, so that specific high school thing, I was like, this is so problematic. I don't get this.
Yeah, and then at the same token, are they now 20 and they can have driver's licenses?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Well, no, see, I think that's the kind of weird thing too. So like, everybody disappeared for 5 years. They all kind of came back, which, Bryan, you touched on the world is trashed. We also know that a lot of people apparently took their boats to Manhattan.
Holy shit,
and so now
right?
New York is going to be like 80 million people, because all of them are going to show up. Or maybe they show up and their house has been destroyed because 5 years ago a plane fell on it. Like, what happens in those instances? And I think we kind of touched on that where's Vision? There's an amazing fight scene between the Scarlet Witch and Thanos, which, again, whatever you feel about the MCU version of the Scarlet Witch, I got goosebumps watching it. I thought it was
you
just
and me both.
Oh, I love that fight because she still is suffering from the loss. It's still fresh for her that Vision has been killed by Thanos, but he was actually killed by Thanos before the snap.
I also have to say it's very refreshing because I think a lot of her characterization in the films has kind of been like the French Lieutenant's woman, like, ooh, and oh my dear, I must fight using my hex powers. And here she kicked ass.
She was unleashed.
Yes, and it was wonderful to see that.
And that's, I think, part of, going along with the so what happens now 5 years later, because there were people that were in planes that were being flown by pilots that disappeared in the snap, so they all died. So everybody who actually died as a result of the snap, not specifically because of the snap, they're all going to be gone. There's still a lot of things that are...
And I think there might be some explanation for that. Again, Far From Home is just a little bit over 2 months away. And it could be just a line that Fury says to Peter, like, I know there are things that we seem to be remembering, but what's going on? Things like that.
Or, hey, wasn't it crazy that all of us disappeared in that snap, but we're all back together and our parents are still, totally cool with us leaving home for a period of time, even though we had been gone for the past 5 years?
But also at the same token, the funeral scene, which clearly has a 15-year-old Spider-Man, took place before Steve made the trip to return the stones. So that's always an out.
Yeah, I mean, there's something that could happen there. Also interesting in the funeral scene, there was a unrecognizable teenage kid, and I did have to read afterwards. That is the boy from Iron Man 3 that Tony Stark,
that's who I was thinking it was. Yeah.
Who we haven't heard from or had any inkling of in the past 6 years since that movie.
Well, that was a great scene though, because look, at the end of the day, Tony is an asshole to people in front of him, but he's not a heartless asshole. Mm-hmm. He made this bond with this kid, and at the end of that movie, he fills up the garage with all of these technological goodies that any kid would dream of. But it's just letting you know, like, he kept in contact with that kid. He had a relationship with him, even though it was off the screen, and it does so much more for me seeing that. And I knew who he was right off the bat. And I turned around to my husband, who I was watching it with, and I was like, oh, that's this is the kid from the end of Iron Man 3, and he was just like, oh, and like even with him, it was just like, oh, so he's not somebody who just forgets about these people. Like, I kind of think of Tony as somebody who he seems arrogant and he seems like he's unattachable to other people, but he's got a mind like a steel trap. I don't think he forgets anybody.
Yeah. Well, and also that kid was extremely important in his growth as a character, because Tony Stark is a dad, and in every step of the word, that kid was like basically the first kid. Before that moment, he was like, I hate kids, and he still was kind of begrudgingly dealing with this child who was trying to help him get everything back or whatever in the third movie. But after that moment, you see him with Spider-Man, with Peter Parker, and it's a believable concern. He's still kind of an aloof jackass, but at the same time, he's not. And that was a very powerful relationship in that movie, and that's why in Infinity War, that was such a devastating devastating scene for Tony when Peter Parker's one of the people.
Devastating scene for the audience. I was watching it last night. I was shaking. Yeah.
But Tony, I feel weird. Like, I feel weird.
I don't want to go.
No. But and then coming back, and then also the scenes in this film with his daughter. It's believable. Like, if he had just been an asshole this whole time, and there has been, there weren't any interactions with kids, and he was just kind of like whatever in Spider-Man, I think it would be harder to kind of accept him as this loving dad in this movie. And I think that by having that sort of succession of characters, and especially bringing that kid back, it kind of reminds the audience, this kid was kind of pivotal in turning him from like a self-centered asshole who really only had love for one person, well, two people, himself and Pepper, to like somebody who actually can show love for somebody younger as a mentor, as a teacher, and as surrogate dad. Which
can we also make Random Storage Space Mouse an honorary Avenger, because without him nothing happens?
What?
The guy that brought back Ant-Man.
Of that rat? The San Francisco.
I thought it was a mouse.
Sewer rat.
I thought it was a mouse.
They seemed a little big, but maybe they grow them big in California.
I don't know.
I saw a meme today, and it referenced that, and it said, how many times did Doctor Strange have to watch that mouse miss that button as he was sitting there counting?
That was another.
Yeah.
Doctor, what's his name? Dr. Ken Jeong?
Ken Jeong.
Yeah.
Ken Jeong.
Jeong in his.
Like that, cameo. It's so weird because usually everybody casts him as the ridiculous, funny, I don't know, zany Asian archetype. I don't even know, whatever else he's done. It's always seems like it's the outlandish dialogue and over the top, he's freaking out about something. He didn't say a word. It's they must have cut something. They must have had dialogue for him, and then they're like, you know what, we're good.
I think there were.
He probably would have explained that he's also a doctor.
Oh well, he does that. Yeah,
he does that a lot.
I think there were a lot of scenes and because there were so many minor characters in here and so many interactions that there must have been a lot that unfortunately hit the cutting room floor. I'm thinking anything with Nick Fury and Kobe Smulders' character. They're only shown for a very, very brief moment in the funeral. Like they have no real interactions with anybody else, but you know that there had to have been some kind of scene, maybe in the denouement scene, you know, in the scenes that they were doing after everything, trying to wrap everybody up and give them a new status quo. But
dude, you haven't had enough Nick Fury in 2019.
Yeah, I know. We had a movie with it was all Nick Fury and Brie Larson.
And what's the next film?
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised that he was standing off like behind everything. It makes sense, I guess, from a thematic, like, okay, he would be the furthest out, the longest in the shot, whatever. But like, you know, he and Carol should be hanging out, catching up. I mean, you know, be nice.
Yeah, I haven't seen you in 20 years.
That also may have been a mechanism where I have a feeling a lot of those actors weren't there on the same day. I'm certain there was a lot of green screening going on there, so that may have been an influence on how things were spaced as well.
There is a missed opportunity there. I just want to point out the funeral for Tony, obviously very important, necessary for many thematic, to tie up this and that. But I was a little disappointed that Natalia, Black Widow did not. Wait, Natasha.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, Natalia. I don't know where I got that from. I'm watching something else. Anyway, they didn't give her too much of any kind of a funeral. And admittedly, you know, they made the comment, you know, did she have family? No, her family. But she ran the Avengers for 5 years. Like, I would have maybe expected, something a little more once they snapped and they're like, oh yeah, she's gone, and she and her and Tony both committed this noble sacrifice. Like, I don't know, I felt like that was a missed opportunity. But again, I get it, because this really is sort of tying up the Iron Man story, you know, as sort of that longest arc. But I don't know, I felt like she got kind of the short end of the stick.
Well, that was funny that you should say that.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh,
Steve.
no, Caleb. Well, I was just going to say that. Funny you should say that, because she's the one person that we have not mentioned at all this entire discussion. We haven't mentioned Black Widow at all, other than like, she's kind of running the Avengers, in the 5 years later. Like, she made probably one of the more important. She had one of the more important sacrifice scenes halfway through the movie, with her and Hawkeye, and that sort of ending of that relationship, and that extremely powerful moment where they're basically fighting each other on who's going to be the one to give their life, and ending it in a way where she had to be the one to die, and making it an impossible choice for Clint was probably one of the other moments in the film that just had me, you know, crying the entire time, just going like, what? Like, there's no choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and,
on the short list, a very short list of the things that I didn't like about this movie. A huge list of things that I absolutely loved and I adored about this movie. There is a short list of things that I kind of rolled my eyes at, or at least got a little upset about, was the treatment of Black Widow, of Scarlett Johansson's character. Because honestly, in this last 10-year run, she's gotten the short end of the stick of everything. Like, there's no reason that we shouldn't already have a Scarlett Johansson-led Black Widow film, and you know, she's played second fiddle in every film she's been in,
mm-hmm.
and then to make her this figure, which you know, they took what Gamora did in the prior film, and not that Gamora had a choice about it, she was sacrificed.
Mm-hmm.
They took that, and Natasha makes this act, like she does it of her own free. She fights for the right to die. And then it's just kind of forgotten about. So yeah, as I walked out of the theater, that was one of the things I was thinking about. I was like, I feel like talk about representation, talk about the importance of the women in this movie, and there's a larger cast of them now, but just once again they gave that character the short end of the stick, and even though they made her like she was a mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
And that upset me. Like I think that's problematic. I understand why they did it. So if going the route that they did, I understand why they went there. But I think there were other options that were available to the screenwriters, to the Russo brothers, to explore. I understand why they chose what they did. One of those things, like you said, armchair quarterbacking. Were it me, I would have done it differently. And of course, we can say that about a number of things. And the same thing with how they used Carol. in this film. You know, the scenes that Carol was in, they were huge. They were big, momentous scenes. I'm already seeing people on the internet, and the internet's going to do its thing. It always does, about how she's a Deus Ex Machina, however you. I'm sorry, I have south mouth. But how she's just a tool, and how she comes in and she breaks everything, ignoring the fact that Doctor Strange was the same thing in this movie, ignoring the fact that several characters, because of the large swath of characters that you have, were all used like that, but they're already saying, oh, and because her movie is just so recently out, they're all saying, okay, well, you gave us this character, and then you did exactly what we thought you were going to do. You just make her come in there and break things. She doesn't really have an important role, which is not true. I wish we could have gotten some of those more human moments with her, especially with her meeting the team. So in the after credit scene of Infinity Gauntlet, or Infinity War, you see her fly in and say, "Where's Fury?" In the opening of this movie, she's just she knows everybody. She just kind of is a part of the team already. They have this rapport together, and I would have loved to have seen some of that. So we really know what kind of relationship she has with these people, other than just a professional one.
Yeah, because I think because the implication, I think, from that end credit scene in Infinity War and then the beginning of this film, it's a period of 3 weeks from when the snap happened and when Tony gets brought back, when she finds Tony and Nebula and brings them back to Avengers headquarters. Presumably she shows up very quickly after the snap happens, because she was paged at the time that it was happening. So possibly they'd been looking for Tony this time, so she might have actually been around for a couple weeks, getting to know most of the team that was actually still around, because we know Thor kind of was off somewhere, not in New Asgard. He was somewhere else. I don't know what the deal was, but again, these are plot holes. These are probably moments that made the cutting room floor, or just things that they didn't think that anybody would really care about. But yeah, I mean, like that getting to know you phase, that was missed. We didn't get that.
Yeah, well, so, they had 3 hours.
Yeah.
And how many characters?
Exactly.
It is one of the things I did like about it is, yes, I totally agree that the first hour kind of drags a bit, and then when it moves, it really moves. The last 2 hours felt half that length, I thought.
Oh yeah.
Can I offer a counterpoint though? I don't think the first hour drags. I actually this is a great comic book action movie, but what I think elevates Marvel's attempts at this to something a little closer to art and have more emotional impact are exactly that first hour, where after that first feint, oh, we're gonna go kill Thanos. Oh, we killed Thanos. Oh crap, whatever. It felt to me like The Leftovers. It actually had the balls to dig in on, this is what it would be like to have a sudden and traumatic loss, at a global or universal or whatever scale. And I think that's where the movie, I see why people would say it's slow, because they want to go in, they want to have the ride, you know what I mean? But man, that's the stuff to me. If you don't do that, I don't think you have the Justice League problem to some extent. You don't have it. You haven't earned it. You know what I mean? You have to go through that emotional catharsis to really see these people sort of at the end of their tether, dealing with the leftovers of civilizations, to appreciate then how much they've lost. So I mean, I know people. I was with people who were kind of like, it was kind of first hour. I was like, hey, I can go to the bathroom now. I can go. Not like willfully, but they were kind of joking that was the time they should have gone. But it's no, man, this is the stuff. This is what you need. This is what makes this elevated and something special.
I also have to say, just as you mentioned, Ken Leung, whatever his name is, with the semi-series, I loved seeing Yvette Nicole Brown without being a joke.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about her. Yeah.
When she popped up in that elevator, I was like, it's the super fans who somehow. Well, actually, no. I can tell you exactly why they're there.
From Community.
Because Joe and Anthony Russo were executive producers and writers on that show as well. So I'm surprised we didn't see Joel McHale pop up, or any of the other actors. But seeing both of them in here in this movie was like, oh, that's great, like, because they're friends of the directors. Like, of course, they're going to show up.
But it was nice to see her used in a different context than she usually is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But she's a super geek.
Oh yeah.
Like
well,
all the rest of us. So
how many episodes of Talking Dead has she been on?
Oh, Talking Dead, the cosplay show that she did for Sci-Fi. I mean, she is a super nerd. So I'm sure that she loved being in this, even in that small role. Was really cool.
Okay, I have a question for you, gentlemen. Do you think within the next 14 days we will see some sort of announcement of a slate of films from Marvel?
In 14 days?
Within the next 14 days, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, for the simple fact that they've announced that the end, the movie that's technically going to end Phase 3 is going to be the Spider-Man Homecoming film. So I think that they're going to need another, they're timing these things so that they are a large announcement so that they draw a crowd. I think that they're going to wait until Homecoming and then release a slate of films that you're going to see, probably something along the lines of New Avengers, and Ask Guardians of the Galaxy and that kind of thing that will really get the buzz going for and after Homecoming. Because, hey, for Homecoming, it's a Spider-Man movie and it's drawing on the Marvel franchise. It's going to pull people in. But after something this big and this culturally significant, it's going to be hard to get people really hyped up for Homecoming.
You mean Far From Home?
Yeah, Far From Home. Sorry, excuse me. For that, as they go into it, especially people who aren't us, that they're not in the zeitgeist of the comics world. People who are just random weekend moviegoers, people who know of the Marvel films off the cuff for what they are. They're going to need another big announcement around that time to really get a lot of people, a lot of butts in seats. So I think they'll wait till that.
I agree with Caleb. I don't think they're going to rush this announcement. I actually thought at one point, didn't they have like a slate, notional at least, out that said, Black Panther 2 and da-da-da-da-da. I thought there was something already out there. Maybe not a Phase 4 proper, but like just by the way, stockholders, we're actually still going to be making these films, so don't sell your shares. But I don't know. Maybe I'm dreaming that mythical.
No, I don't think you're dreaming that. I know that they have announced it. I mean, these are known. We know that the Black Widow film, I think, is actually being filmed, or at least started production, and which again, I think we kind of talked about that. How is that going to work? Is it going to be a prequel? Is it going to be something? Or are they going to pull her out of time or out of the Soul Stone? Who knows? But the one thing that they haven't done, and I think, Bill, this might be probably maybe like the next, like a comma after your question. Are they going to announce what the focus of the next phase of films is going to be? Because obviously with the first slate of films, they didn't know that Iron Man 1 was going to be a thing. And they just kind of were starting to play around with the idea of connecting a universe when they had the Incredible Hulk have a connection there at the end of the film. But they knew pretty quickly into making it, especially I think after I think it was the Captain America movie, that they were going to tell an overarching story, and it was going to be Thanos and the Infinity Gauntlet. We don't know what the next thing is going to be because they haven't really set it up yet.
Well, isn't there an Eternals movie?
There's an Eternals
movie.
It's unofficially been announced that that
Yeah.
Angelina Jolie is one of the leads, assuming she's
Exactly. Cersei. There's a couple other people too that were previously announced, but so we know that there's going to be movies. We know that there's going to be a galactic bent because there's still a Guardians of the Galaxy 3 that's going to happen.
And you also know whatever happens with films that have made over $1 billion, that you are guaranteed a Black Panther 2 and a Captain Marvel 2.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Exactly.
There's no way that's not happening. What I think you're going to see
now that we've got X-Men.
What I think you're going it's okay. What I think you're going to see is very soon an announced slate of dates, but no films named to the dates.
Okay.
To kind of get people revved up. Because this film leaves you with some questions still, and I think they're going to play with us a little bit in that kind of way. You don't want to go away thinking this is the end of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and some people do because they're idiots. And I think that's what you will see is you'll see an announcement of dates that are associated with the upcoming films, but that they'll be rolling out what those specific films are at points where it makes sense, like whether it's around New York Comic Con or something, San Diego Comic Con, when it's a sensible time to assign some. But I do think very soon you are going to see a slate of dates coming up.
Yeah, I think you're right. With maybe like a little bit of time to let this breathe. I think you're going to see more detail, like you're saying. And I mean, yeah, the Comic Cons make sense. Although
and I also think that ties in with Disney Plus with the official announcement of a couple of those shows.
Oh yes. Oh, the shows. I think that's actually really where you're going to see more traction because that's already up and moving. I was actually talking to somebody about WandaVision and how there's some beat set in the 50s or it looks like the 50s, and we're all like, oh my God, they're going to do Tom King's run with Wanda somehow. Like, that could be really interesting. And anyway, but yeah, I think you're right. They got to keep the machine going. There's still. Unlike, unfortunately, Star Wars, where I think they're kind of like taking a pause and, they're gonna maybe not go as fast and as furious. Sorry, I saw that. Which I'm like, that's not even it's not even the same franchise anymore. But whatever. They're gonna take. They're gonna keep moving. The machine is gonna keep going. They're gonna keep cranking out Marvel content. Until there's a Star Wars moment where they're like, oh, maybe we should slow this down. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't want that to happen. I didn't want that to happen with Star Wars, but I mean, there is value in absence, and
I don't think they slow it down though. I think they pivot, and I think that's where a lot of the importance of the merger comes in because as Steve was alluding to earlier. They now have the X-Men franchise that they can pivot to. And there's a way into that franchise through Wanda, through the experiments there. And then they also have the Fantastic Four family they can pivot to. And for a lot of people, those are going to seem like a different franchise. And so it's not, it's all going to the same bank account, for lack of a better analogy, but it's going to seem like a fresh new franchise that they're going to roll into. And the thought of even combining those worlds is just, Endgame is breaking all the records now. You take 5 years and you build up the mutants and the X universe, and then you throw it into the Avengers universe with Sam as Cap and the Asgardians in space and all that. You're going to fill it up. Like we can't fathom that amount of money.
Yeah. I can't imagine right now, an AVX. What a license to print money that would be.
That would be incredible. And just so you know, I'm looking at the numbers now, and it's 10 p.m. on the East Coast on Sunday, the 28th, and Avengers Endgame has already raked in 1.2 billion with a B worldwide in its first weekend. 1.2 billion. There is no other film in the history of this planet that has made that much money in that little time.
Do you think it's going to beat Avatar?
Oh, yeah.
You think so?
In a weekend? Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's going to beat Avatar. And I know that the highest grossing movie of all time apparently is Gone with the Wind.
When you factor in inflation dollars, there's still films that grossed incredible amounts of money, like Star Wars and the Ten Commandments and The Sound of Music, that aren't really given their due because of inflationary dollars. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, domestically the highest grossing film is it still Avatar, or is it?
I thought it was.
Or is it
domestically it's still Going with the Wind, adjusted for it.
No. I'm talking straight dollars. I'm talking straight dollars.
Straight dollars. I believe it is Star Wars: The Force Awakens. So Star Wars 7.
In actual, I think that's at like 11 or so.
Domestic, it's $930 million.
So I think that's like around 11 in the inflationary dollars. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in its various runs is over $1 billion. And how do we get here?
Yeah, it's great. But like the original Star Wars, Sound of Music, E.T., Titanic. I mean, these are the movies that domestically have made an insane amount of money if you adjust for inflation. It's it's staggering. But if we start looking at it and saying, okay, well, worldwide, Avatar made $2.8 million or $2.8 billion while it was in release, like 10 years ago. I mean, I think we have a chance of seeing Avengers Endgame past that.
Yeah. My dad passed away in very early 2000, and one of the big regrets that I wish he was able to experience is Box Office Mojo, because he never would have been off that website at all. And the fantasy, my dad was doing fantasy football before they even had a name for it. And there's a thing called there's a fantasy box office thing.
I've seen that. I've seen it advertised in the movies.
Yeah. And he would have been all over that. He would have been all over that. So I just looked at Box Office Mojo, and I was right. Star Wars: The Force Awakens, adjusted for ticket price inflation, number 11. I was right.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Once you start adjusting for inflation, I mean, you're looking at movies that were made in the 30s. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to keep moving with this show. It's already a bit late. It's past 10 o'clock, but one of our conceits with these movie episodes is we provide people listening with some suggestions regarding the core content that the films were based on, some comic book recommendations. So I'm going to start with you, Caleb. Why don't you provide for the people and for us recommendation of an Avengers-related comic that people might enjoy?
Oh, for sure. So the Avengers are kind of my team. That was as far as my introduction to superhero comics. I think I said it earlier. I remember where I was when I picked up my first Avengers comic off the spinner rack, and I'm 31, so I'm not that old. So when I first got into comics and into the Avengers specifically, it was during the Busiek and the Perez run. It was very early on in that. So that is technically Avengers Volume 3, and it took place in the late 90s. I think it started in 98 and went through the 2000s. And of course, it ended with Bendis's run on it. But the Busiek-Perez run is to me my favorite run. It's very few writers, even Hickman, who I love. He doesn't have that nostalgia that run has for me, and especially for being a kid who grew up in the rural South, and seeing characters like Triathlon come in there, like they were speaking the language that I knew. They were speaking to the fact that there were like race relations weren't settled. They were speaking to relationships. There's the love triangle between the Vision and Wonder Man and Wanda. It's one of the things that really solidified my love of that. So my advice to folks is just go read the first 25 issues of that if you can find it. There's a few other artistic teams who step in for a few small arts in the middle of it, but most of it's just Busiek and Perez, and it's what solidified George Perez as being my personal favorite comic artist of all time. And I was fortunate to get to meet him at C2E2 this year, and that just that means a lot to me, because if it wasn't for George Perez, I wouldn't love the Avengers, and I wouldn't love comics in the way that I do. So. Yeah, the Busiek and Perez Volume 3 run of the Avengers. It's great stuff.
Okay, let's go over to Bryan. Bryan, how about you for an Avengers recommendation?
So I'm torn because I do love the Hickman stuff, and he definitely should be credited for introducing a lot of new characters to these movies. But that I've talked ad nauseum about that one, I think, in previous episodes. So, if you're curious about Hickman and the Avengers, you got a lot of reading to do. But I would actually recommend Bendis's and John Romita Jr.'s Avengers sort of relaunch that they did. I think it was the Age of Heroes, they called it. Trying to find the volume number, but honestly, if you just look up Bendis and Romita, and Avengers, you'll find it. What's notable about that run is it does involve the Infinity Stones, and it also has Tony Stark yielding the Infinity Gauntlet. So not the same thing happens in the slightest when he does this. It's no great, sacrifice that he's making by yielding it, but it is a cool exploration. I remember it being kind of a weird and chaotic time in Marvel, not going even that far back, I think within maybe like the last decade or so, where, Bendis was coming off of the New Avengers and really kind of relaunching the franchise that he helped both disassemble and then reassemble in New Avengers. He was finally putting all the pieces together to make Avengers a thing again as the old team got back together with a bunch of new additions. So I would check that out. John Romita Jr., of course, if you like his style, you're going to love it. If you don't like his style, well, I don't have to tell you, you have bad taste or something. I don't know. I mean, it's certainly one of those things that doesn't work for everybody. It's a little blocky. It's kind of like the conversation we had about Liefeld, maybe. There's certain aspects where you're like, that's a choice. But I do love his style. His style is definitely something I find nostalgia in from his earlier work, and of course the work of his dad and his brother, of course. So or not brother, sorry, just dad. But yeah, no, I highly recommend you should definitely check out the Avengers. Again, I couldn't find a volume. It's Avengers #1, and I think it was like
It was actually volume 4 because there was that long period where the New Avengers was the Avengers book.
Got it. Okay, so they call that volume 3. Okay, cool. Well, so yeah, it was a volume 4. Again, if you look up Romita Jr. and Bendis, you'll find it.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over to Steve, and Steve's going to make a very important point in that there have been a number of Avengers-related spin-offs. So, Steve, what's your favorite that you want to recommend?
Well, as most of you know, I didn't really grow up reading the Avengers. So unlike Caleb, I actually went the other route through the X-Men. So for me, that kind of team dynamic, the unsure of themselves, just kind of born into powers rather than, through various super soldier programs, or et cetera, or, making their own suits. They had a lot of flaws, and I especially saw a lot of that in the New Mutants. I love the New Mutants and, the early parts of X-Force, where they were still young people. And even in X-Men, they would bring on young X-Men every so often. And so when Jamie McKelvey and Kieran Gillen released a second volume of Young Avengers, actually not too long ago in 2013, I decided I wanted to give it a shot. One, because I love their style. I love the writing and art that they bring when they work together, and it's just a lot of fun. But in Young Avengers, you kind of got that same feel. Here are young heroes, some of whom were just kind of given power. They were born with powers because they're mutants, or were somehow kind of just thrust into these situations where now they have powers and they have to figure out how to use them, but then also how to work in a team without any parental supervision, so to speak. And so you had some really great characters here, some really great queer characters. Hulkling and Wiccan were two, as well as Prodigy, who apparently was a former mutant, lost most of his powers. He says he loses powers, but it's kind of iffy in this. And is bisexual. You also have Miss America Chavez, who is from a universe where basically it's all women and all lesbians. There's just some really great, amazing characters here. You also have Kate Bishop Hawkeye taking center stage. You've got Marvel Boy, the Novar Marvel Boy, also taking a pretty interesting role here as sort of almost a senior member of the team. And then you've also got a really great version of Loki, and that's Kid Loki. And the dynamic of this team, the way that it's written, and of course the art is beautiful, but the way that it's written, the misadventures that they get into that only these characters could experience in very weird ways. The whole negative universe with the fake mother who wants to control them all, the creation or the creation behind Miss America's universe. Kid Loki fighting basically himself, an evil female version of himself with Leah. Like there's just some amazing stuff that happens in really what only ends up being about maybe a year and a half's worth of issues. It's very short, easy to read the whole thing pretty quick. I think it's maybe 2 or 3 collected volumes altogether, but definitely was such a great series, and I really recommend if you haven't read it, you can pick it up. You don't have to know anything about these characters; they put it all in the book, and it's a lot of fun to read.
Okay, unlike Caleb, I'm as old as sand, and I first came on to the Avengers in the mid '70s. Actually, almost qualifies the early '70s, late 1973, early 1974, and at the time, Steve Englehart was the writer, and he brought in a lot of elements that are still central to Avengers lore to this day, like Wanda and Vision being a couple, introduced Mantis, introduced Beast to the team, so that's really one of the first alignments of X-Men and the Avengers storylines in a sense. But the books that I'm going to point people toward was the run where David Michelinie was the writer and John Byrne was the artist, and this was from 1979 to very early 1980. And these are collected in a couple of trades. One is called the Yesterday Quest, another, and that's from way back in 1994. A more recent one is 2009, The Knights of Wondergore, and these are also collected within the Masterworks and the Essential series. So this period of Avengers, I think, is really strong. Byrne was just kicking ass as an artist, and it's amazing to think that at the same time as he was doing this book, he was also drawing X-Men and Fantastic Four on a monthly basis. Not the Fantastic Four that he later wrote as well as drew in the 80s, but this was his first run on Fantastic Four, happening at the same time as this book. I can't imagine. And again, comic books were a little bit shorter in terms of page count. They were 17, 18 pages, not over 20, but still, my God, 3 monthly books. It's just incredible. And this was a period with the Avengers where they were actually restricted in membership due to their charter with the U.S. government. The Falcon was brought into the team effectively as affirmative action. And the central storyline throughout these issues is Wanda and Pietro finding out what their true origin is. That, at least in the context that it was presented right here, was not what they had thought originally. And you also bring Ms. Marvel onto the team during this time, and just the Beast is such a great team character during this period. And those are the books that I would suggest people for just really good, fun Bronze Age stories, but at the same token with some true story resonance. I would go to the run, which I think is like Avengers 181 to about 193 or so. There's a couple of fill-in issues here and there, both in writer and artist. But the David Michelinie, John Byrne run, those are books I would hope people check out at some point. All right. Wow. We can talk movies and comics. Look at that. It's late.
Hey, Bill, can I throw in an addendum?
Sure,
in there
please.
real quick. So one of the characters who is my favorite character both in the comics and in this film was the Hulk. Mm-hmm. Specifically this version of the Hulk. And you're not going to find him. You're going to see him around Avengers comics, but you're not going to find him in a lot just because of the nature of the Hulk's character. He's kind of a wanderer. He wanders off and does his own thing a lot. But Peter David is the guy who kind of conceptualized the version of the Hulk that you see in the film. At least to the best of my knowledge. Mm-hmm. And if you want a good taste of what that looks like in the comics, the best place to find that, like we're talking the purple pants and the black tank top wearing Hulk, go check out his Visionaries run. You can get the Peter David Visionaries, the Hulk mm-hmm. run. And I think volume 8 is the volume that specifically got this inception of the Hulk. And mm-hmm. it's some great stuff. Peter David, you're going to be hard pressed to find another person who can write the Hulk that well. Mm-hmm. Although, hey, Al Ewing is giving him a run for his money right now.
Yeah,
So,
I really have to check out Immortal Hulk. I've only heard good things.
Oh.
I guess it's a thumbs up from you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. When we end an episode of the Comic Book Bears, we do so with a segment we call the Wolves of the Week segment, where we signify something, be it a comic book or maybe a film or a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener, may be interested in sampling. We did this episode really quickly on the cuff, so not everybody here has a Wolf of the Week ready, but if somebody does, please speak now.
I've got one.
Go ahead.
If I can. I always love doing this show with you guys, especially because of this segment right here. And so, Bill, this one's going to make you proud of me, which is something I always strive to do. I'm a Marvel guy. We all know that. But because of the nature of doing a comics podcast and being in the comics culture, I'm dipping my toe into DC a little bit. There is a book going on right now that it's not getting a lot of talk, but it's extremely, extremely good. And that is the Freedom Fighters book. It's being drawn by Eddie Barrows. It's being written by Robert Venditti. It takes place on Earth X, and this is an Earth to which the Nazis or the Razzies, depending on where you're at in the story, what you want to call them. They win World War II and they conquer the world. And these guys, it's just a really, really fun inception of a lot of golden age character tropes. That they throw into the DC universe, specifically in this run right now. Plastic Man is kind of an SS guardsman, being a bad guy. You get the Spirit of 76 is alive and well. You get some great people who are on the team, and there's the Human Bomb, there's Atom Girl, there's just a ton of great people who play off this trope, and there's only one or two books being produced by DC right now in which the art is more stunning than this. It's top notch. Eddie Barrows is killing it. So go check it out. It's called Freedom Fighters.
All right. Any of you other gentlemen have a wolf to offer?
Shockingly, I do not, because normally I have a TV-related one. But actually, you know what? I will go ahead and do it, because now people actually have the chance or the opportunity to watch or binge watch the entire season. Star Trek Discovery. I know it got a lot of negative responses back when it premiered last year. But in my opinion, it was a great return to form and a great jumping off point to something else. The evolution of Star Trek into something more than just what we got used to with this period, with the episodic storytelling, with really no major character growth, etc., other than Deep Space Nine. But I think they've done an amazing job in the first season telling a singular story with the characters. Second season, I think, topped it by a lot. In those, I believe it was 14 episodes total, the two-part final. I think they covered some of the gaps and the plot holes or whatever, the inconsistencies that people identified in the first season. Did a great job answering a lot of those criticisms, sometimes very directly, as in, see, we told you, it makes sense, kind of ways, and ended on a really fantastic point. And there's also some short episodes, short treks as they're called, that are also available on CBS All Access if you are in the States, or Netflix if you're not. I believe it is coming to Netflix overseas shortly, the whole second season. But definitely, right now you have the opportunity to see both seasons together, and I think they make great bookends. They are getting a third season, but if you were to watch these two, it does a great job of starting the story in the first season, the first episode pilot, and kind of closing out a particular era of the show by the final episode. So Star Trek Discovery, if you have a chance. I think CBS All Access is doing a special 30 days free or something. So, pick it up, binge watch it, maybe binge watch The Good Fight while you're at it, and then cancel it.
I did that with Runaways on Hulu. Bryan, you have anything, or you?
Man, I'm just happy to be here at this point. No, I did watch Russian. Was Russian Doll? Is that the Netflix show with Natasha Lyonne. I've been enjoying that. So
Okay.
That's about all I got.
Yeah. I'm woofed out. Yeah. The thing I thought was going to be a woof, I didn't end up enjoying it too much. So, so I think we're going to wrap this segment up here. I promise I'll be better next time around. And I'm also frustrated with the woofs because I tend to provide a woof and then it disappears. That happened with the Aquaman documentary that was on the DC Universe app. And then a couple episodes later, a couple of episodes ago, I recommended the public domain files for the Fawcett comics for Shazam characters, and DC sent cease and desist letters to a couple of those places. So now there's like substantial amounts of public domain comics that are not available legally. So
way to go, Bill.
I need to take a break from the woof. I need to find an airtight woof. I think an airtight woof. It'll come.
Take up knitting. You could have like a woof on certain pattern books that were available in the 1960s.
Steve, don't ever change. Okay. Right. Okay, so we're at the end here. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to write to us, you can do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. And you can catch us on iTunes. You can catch us on Stitcher Radio and some of the other podcatching platforms. Cable.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Cable channel 275 now.
Caleb, do you just want to give a quick plug for Southern Fried Geekery where people can reach you out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So my podcast, as Bill said, is the Southern Fried Geekery Podcast. We record and drop new episodes every Sunday. It's about an hour and a half long. We are also on the Facebooks. We're not on the Tumblr. We are on the Instagram and the Twitters. You can send me an email if you want to write to the show at southernfriedgeekery@gmail.com. And other than that, just go forth and love some comics.
All right. And Bryan, why don't you provide the contact info for Flame On as well, since we're
yeah. Well, and so it's very timely because this will go out and Flame On's is going to go out this week. So if you're interested in more gay and geeky nonsense with a healthy dose of relationship stuff lately, it's interesting, and if not oddly timely, and Drag Race. We talk about Drag Race a lot. It's Flame On Show on all of your favorite social media outlets. iTunes, Stitcher, Google, whatever their podcast app is that I use. Yeah, Flame On. Just look up Flame On Show, and it's about every 2 weeks on a Friday. So check us out.
All right. You're going to hear Woof and an Explosion, and we'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.
Woof!
Kiss me twice, then kiss me once again. It's been a long, long time. Haven't felt like this, my dear, since can't remember when. It's been a long, long time. You'll never know how empty they all seem without you. So kiss me once, then kiss me twice, then kiss me once again. It's been a long